Hello, I'm Marge Dean, President of Women in Animation, and I would like to welcome you to this wonderful panel put on by the Writers Guild and MPAC and Women in Animation. It's a really exciting time for animation. We are seeing incredible growth and opportunities for people in our industry, fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately for us, um, what the pandemic has really shown is that animation is a really viable form of entertainment, and we did well through the whole period of time. There was no job loss. There was continuation of production, and in fact, increase in production. And then also with a lot of successes of adult entertainment in animation, it's opened up a whole new world and many more opportunities. So I think the conversation today is very timely, and and Women in Animation is very happy to be here and to sponsor it. I'm going to turn it over to Sue Obeda and let her take it from here.
Thank you so much, Marge. Really appreciate it. On behalf of MPAC's Hollywood Bureau, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, it's been really awesome working with you and Women in Animation. We appreciate the partnership, and we hope we can continue to collaborate in the future. Thank you to the Writers Guild Foundation for their continued support and amazing work it does in preserving and protecting the history and craft of writing for the screen. Specifically, I would like to thank Katie Buckland, Enid Porteguez, and Katrina Javier for all that they do at the foundation. We really appreciate you and adore you. Thank you. MPAC's Hollywood Bureau works in the entertainment industry to change the narrative around Muslims on TV and film. We are so excited to be co-hosting the panel discussion today because we know that part of this change very much includes storytelling through animation. So we are very hopeful for the future. I'd also like to thank our panelists today for their participation, and a big thanks to our moderator, Irma Ikram, for her tireless work in organizing today's panel. And because we are about to have a great conversation, very enriching and engaging one, I will just toss it over to Irma to begin. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you so much, Marge. It's such a pleasure having you both. My name is Irma Ikram. I am a member of Women in Animation and also a volunteer for MPAC and the Writers Guild. So I'm so excited to introduce our amazing panelists today, one of which is Ms. Camille Eden, who is a vice president of recruiting at Nickelodeon and talent development, and like myself, not only a member of Women in Animation, but on the board of directors as a chair for talent development. With an immaculate career behind her, helping to staff projects like Frozen, Frozen 2, and Moana, just to name a few. We have also with us Yori Mochizuki. Born and raised in Japan, Yori has brought his incredible and unique vision to projects like the Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and is currently a director at Sony Pictures Animation. We also have Paul Abadilia. Paul, after graduating college, starting as an intern at Pixar Animation Studios, Paul's career has blossomed. And most recently, you can see the streets of New York from his eyes in Pixar's Soul. And lastly, but not least, we have Ms. Christine Sanko, who has written for projects like Kippo and The Age of Wonder Beasts, The Fairly Odd Parents, one of her most recent achievements being a co-EP on Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, and is currently a showrunner on a TBA DreamWorks project. Awesome. Hi, guys. Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to explain to our audience how the breakdown of the panel is going to work. So it's going to be a little bit more of a ping pong than a hot potato. So I'm going to pull two people in from our panel because it may seem a little bit random that we have a director, a writer, a set art director, and a recruiter. But the truth of the matter is the world of animation is an ecosystem where everybody depends on each other in some way. And whether we're lost in our hidey holes or have our blinders on, the objective that I want to achieve is to show that we're all connected. And if a project is as amazing as it turns out to be, it's because of the people who make up that team. So, okay, let's get started. So, Yori and Christine, I wanted to ask you guys about the pitching process. So since our topic has to do with balancing the brand with the story, the objective behind that is to understand as new kinds of stories emerge and more of a conscious studio culture is created of who we're hiring. When it comes to taking your story, do you find that it's more of having to adjust our story to fit the brand? Or is it more so having to target a certain brand and write your story according to that? So I just want to know your guys' experience in regards to that. So Yori, let's start with you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you again for inviting me to this discussion, even though I'm not a writer or a Muslim or a woman. So I feel included already. So thank you so much. As far as the pitch and how I adjust to who I'm pitching to, I think I adjust what to include and what to not to include depending on my audience. But I think it all kind of comes from the same place. I process my pitch from really the emotion, whether it's anger or frustration or sadness or anything that really inspired my story in the begin with. That's my North Star. And I try to stay true to that. Filmmaking is a teamwork, and pitching is it's just the first step. It's like a blind date, I guess. I want the other person to like me and of course like my story, but I can't change it around. I got to be honest, because the truth will come out. So I always really hold on to that first emotion that inspired my story, and I try to create the story around it. Focus on the characters and the relationship, and that emotion that I felt at the very beginning becomes the theme of the story. And, I try to hold on to it. And, I've had plenty of people telling me no, but that's okay, because I believe that there are people out there who are into the same kind of stuff that you're into or that I'm into. And so I got lucky. I feel truly blessed to work over at Sony and found my people who are into the things that I'm excited about. And so I think rather than adjusting to the brand, I think my pitch is really just the goal is to communicate my excitement for the story. And if I can share that, and if the other person feels the same way, then we can go on to have a second date, and then hopefully it'll turn into a long-term relationship. That's, I think, my goal.
Cool. And Christine, how would you say your journey has been, as a writer, to take stories that are personal to you, but then to also have to cater to something that's going to be a heavy hitter, or it's going to make a huge splash at not necessarily the box office, but a huge splash on the interwebs, so to speak?
This is a great question, and something that I wish that someone told me. I think when I was early on in my career, I tried to do more of that, tried to do more catering to this or that, or it seems like, office comedies or something are doing well. And now I'm in a place where I finally figured out, you can't really tell what the studios, you can't tell exactly what they're going to pick up, or you also don't know what else they're about to have on their slate. And so the best thing I think that you can do is have the passion for a project that means a lot to you. And totally off of what you were saying, Yori, work on characters and situations in a setting that you were potentially gonna spend years on, and can come up with stories that mean a lot to you, kind of a thing. And but recently I have been working on a project where someone is a former exec, and it's been really a piece of advice she gave as we went out to start pitching to Hulu's and Netflix and stuff, was to when you like same pitch, but depending on where they are, focus more on this part of the pitch. If it feels like they have this kind of a slate going on, or if your project is like more adult or more this or that, like you can pick the things that either go with what they've got going on or is a little bit different from what they already have, depending on what the pitch is.
Do either one of you feel like you've ever had to like mute a certain part of your story to kind of just like get yourself in the door? Or has it always just kind of been like any project where it starts off as one thing and then it like transforms over time to another?
Not so much mute, but edit, because I always try, like we try to make our pitches just not too long, and you're so excited about everything that you've been coming up with, but also have the understanding that execs use so many pitches a day and you don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yori, do you have anything to add? I'd love to know your thoughts.
I mean, I think as a director, I think my job is to listen, and the filmmaking is teamwork. So of course, if the executive has different opinion, of course I'll listen to it. I may not agree, but it's not the fight. You know, I don't want to fight. I want to collaborate. So, and I think that ultimately, I think good idea wins. You know, it doesn't matter who brought that idea. At the end of the day, when audience see it on screen, it doesn't matter. So I try to really listen to that. Try to and just hopefully I can decide what's right for the story.
So you don't feel like when you have like a differing idea, it's not necessarily that it's dictated by the brand itself. It's more so like this is what audiences were like, or this is what helps add to the story, or like do you feel like that you because I get the feeling you want to like work with them, right? Because obviously they like your pitch. So, but have there been instances where you're just like this doesn't work? But
I try it, you
yeah,
know.
oh, that's cool.
I think because I can be totally wrong, and I've been wrong so many times, and so I like to just try it. But again, I think kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I think that first inspiration you got, the feeling that inspires you and you know kept you up all night because you can't wait to get that story made, you know, that'll tell you if you're on the right track or not. And for me, when I see someone who's really passionate and excited about their vision, I feel like, man, there's something good going on there. Like I'd like to see it, you know. And so I think as a director or writer, even as a story artist, like I want to try to convey that feeling. And you know, ultimately, again, we are serving the story. So that's kind of what it comes down to.
That's a very awesome and positive way to look at it. I like that. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on to our second question. Now that we've kind of established how the pitching process can be viewed, we're going to talk about the hiring process and how we build our dream team. So Camille and Paul, I'd like to pull you guys in for this topic. Since you guys are both veterans in your field, and not to say anybody's old, but you guys have like really, really robust careers behind you in the studio world, how would you say the landscape in terms have changed in terms of the hiring process of like the people who are being brought on? Like, of course, the advent of the internet, I feel like has made a huge difference in that. But yeah, I would love to know, Camille, starting with you, what has your experience started as, and how has it transformed over time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, thank you again for having me on this panel. This is really exciting to be with everybody. And you know, the landscape has changed tremendously. I've been in animation and visual effects and for a little bit now. When I started, you know, things were really compartmentalized. There was TV animation, there was feature animation, there was visual effects, there was gaming, AR and VR wasn't even a thing then. But and everybody kind of stayed in their lane, you know. and even like in writing and all the jobs that, you know, pertain to them. As technology changed and the industry changed, the lines started to blur quite a bit. And so now you have people, you started to first see people who were on one side, like move over into games because games became more cinematic and they started to have more storylines. And, you know, people who worked in TV would never be considered for features and vice versa. And now you just have this melting pot of talent. And then with the streaming now and the technology now and AR and VR and, you know, things like, you know, Google and the technology companies are looking for the creatives and the storytellers to tell the story and shape the technology. So the landscape has changed and there's more and more and more opportunities for people all across. That's been really amazing to watch. And so there's way more opportunity for people, I think, and there's more resources now too to get to the jobs and the information, and things like this talk even is a perfect example of, you know, networking and bridging the gap and providing access. So I think it's changed, you know, and just, you know, we just hope it gets better and better. But it really has changed quite a bit.
Awesome. And Paul, how would you say that as someone who has worked in like a specific area of animation, how would you say that things have changed for you going from starting as an intern to now being an art director?
Totally. And again, I just want to also say thank you for including me in this panel. Great to meet all of you. You know, during school, you know, you're taught all these disciplines of possible routes you can take as a career path in animation. You can be a storyboard artist, a designer, a modeler, lighter, etc. So we all had to, there was this thing of you had to pick your lane and you had to stick with that lane because that was your way in. There is truth to that. And I still echo that with the students I meet with, that, you know, it is important to at least master one discipline so that you can get through the door. But then at the same time, like, you have to have an awareness of how can I be most effective in a collaborative environment, you know, being a team player and you know, like just getting a little bit more insight of like, all right, if I'm drawing something right now here that I'm designing, how will that translate into 3D? How can I work with my counterparts in, you know, in the sets department, the modeling, lighting departments, so that I can get a little bit more insight of to like what they need to deal with, so that our vision in the art department can be realized, you know, one in 3D, but also allow those technical artists to include their own voice and plus it. And I think that's what makes, from my experience, being at Pixar for a number of years now, what makes our films, you know, that much more impactful, I think, and at least visually, but also at the same time, you know, all that asks for, you know, being collaborative and the idea of being in your own specific lane. You know, Camille, like you said, the lines are being blurred. Over the years, for me specifically, I came in primarily as a set designer, but being at a studio, I mean, I'm peers now with all these professionals, and I can just knock on the door like, hey, I'm really interested in what it means to be a successful lighting designer. I really want to learn how to paint, and I can just knock on somebody's door and, like, you know, just really bug them. And they're really good about mentoring too. And so at the same time, like, you have that ongoing education of being in a studio environment and learning from your peers. And all the more to emphasize, Camille, your point about the lines being blurred. And I love that. And I think just in a world where, you know, more or less schedule or budgets are a little bit stricter and things need to be turned around a little bit more faster, having a team that is versatile skill-wise, that can do multiple things and you know, and collaborate with all sorts of departments. And for me personally, just having a versatile skill set makes my job that much more fun because I'm not doing the same thing over and over. So there's a definite plus to that. Yeah.
And I just also want to add, you know, everything Paul said is spot on. And I also want to add that, you know, it's super important to remember when you go into a role or a studio or a job, or that, you know, you are working as part of a team. It's all about collaboration. And also when you have an understanding, it's great to have your one skill set, but when you have that understanding of what everybody else does, it makes you more marketable and it makes you more hireable. You know, if you really can walk in to a job and understand, you know, what the director needs. And, you know, when we interview people, we tell them that you're helping to recreate the director's vision. And, you know, he's trusting you with his or her vision. They're trusting you with their vision. And, you know, your role is to make that happen in the best way possible, but to bring your own aesthetic. And so, you know, it's all the way through the pipeline. So I just want to say, you know, everything Paul is saying is right on. You know, it's about collaboration and teamwork, even though you are an individual contributor. It's super important.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like just the advent of the internet, whether that meant accessibility to having different kinds of avenues of education, or whether it's streaming alone, like everything just because of the internet has really changed the whole landscape. So it's really cool to see. Paul, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, and also too, speaking of landscape, right? Like where we get information, like, you know, like talent, you know, can come from anywhere. You know, you don't have to go to a traditional four-year college to get the kind of education that you need to work in animation. You know, some of the students I come across are self-taught. They've taken courses online, you know, or just had like mentorships with folks that they reach out to individually. And so it can, you know, education can come from anywhere, and talent can come from anywhere. And I think, you know, the need to cast, you know, as wide of a net as possible is something that I think not just, you know, we at Pixar need to do, I think to everybody, because, you know, ultimately, like we need to we realize we need to create films, content that reflect the global population, right? And in order to do that, we need to attract talent that reflects those films, those shows, those stories, those unique perspectives. So that I think, you know, is a great catalyst for you know, changing that landscape over time.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that is a perfect segue to the next question, which is for Christine and Camille. That, I mean, as people of color, you know, the hiring process for us has definitely been like very different and is continuing to vastly change. So Kristen, as a writer, and Camille, as someone who works with helping to staff all these projects, how can we build these teams without the focus necessarily being on checking boxes? Because yes, while we are on a very good trajectory, I guess I get a fear could be that it becomes kind of like the reverse problem of what we're having, and we're unintentionally unincluding particular ethnicities or any of that sort. But yeah, Christine, I would love to start with you and your experience of, now that you've come to a place in your career where you are hiring people and bringing them onto your project. What are you looking for? What is your dream team? And like, how can we continue to make it better?
I mean, no matter what the project is, like, you know, talent is so important. I think that I came up at a time where the, you know, diversity hire had such a stigma to it, and I have like such like PTSD about that. And
Me too.
I'm trying to find this balance. I'm like, I also want to know this answer, because they're trying to find this balance between knowing that it's important, and but you also don't want to make that, I never want to make anyone feel like that's the only thing. But I know, like, from my point of view, like, you don't hire anyone who's not talented. The talent is there. And, you know, as much as you can keep an eye on the diversity as possible, then like, yes. And I know that I've had some conversations with people about like not using words like checking boxes, or like even just saying want instead of need implies like you actively want this person and it's not like an obligation or something, but that's also just something that people aren't thinking about. They mean want, but they just, didn't realize until someone else brought it up.
Yeah, it's the verbiage. Verbiage, I feel like, is definitely changing for sure of how we are saying, even if intentions are good,
Yeah.
there's definitely, it's how you say something and what you say. So for sure, I hear that.
Yeah.
So Camille, yeah. So Camille, how would you say, as someone who presents all these people, like, is there something that you'd want to kind of add to this, or what your experience has been?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, everybody's this is such a great talk. I'm loving it. And I think there's a couple I have a lot to say on it, but I know we don't have all that much time. I
Let it
think
out, girl. Let it out.
I'm gonna
I want to
say
hear it. We want to hear it.
I think you need to start, one of my pet peeves is when people say, I'm gonna take a chance, like I'm gonna take a risk on this person. You know what Christine said, talent is talent. And at the end of the day, we look for talent, like the top talent. Um, I think you always have to hire for potential. What tends to happen on a lot of shows and films and projects is people hire what they know. And when you hire what you know, yes, you may get somebody who can hit the ground running, but when you hire for somebody for their potential, they're hungry. They're going to give you 2010%, right? They might show up what So I think it's really important to look at potential and what that potential can bring and what that can do to your story or project, your whatever it is. And I also think that what Paul was saying is there's a lot of people who are self-taught, and that shows hunger, that shows drive, that shows initiative. I also think that to start with, you have to start in some of those leadership roles. There's a lot of programs out there for early career, but it's also about staffing the writers' room, bringing in diverse showrunners. You have to work at it from both angles, and you shouldn't have to check a box. You should just be out there hiring the best talent for your show, but looking at what all the options are. And again, there's so many amazing programs, and I know I talked about this talk, like Women in Animation has a mentor circle. There's so many other orgs out there now that have come up. They might have been around a while, but this time is fantastic to take advantage of all these great networking opportunities and orgs out there, like WIA and Latinx, and there's so many. And they, Rise Up Animation, they offer all these great access points for people to connect. And so the people on the hiring end need to tap into that. And that includes, directors and showrunners. And it's great that you all are here, because you're showing up. And it's like you need to have that mindset if we want things to change. And that also comes from the studio level too. So, that's kind of what we're about at WIA. And in the work that I do at Nickelodeon, it's about, creating those access points for people and bringing in that potential.
Christine, when we had art, oh, sorry, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to know, like, things like, are there other like pet peeve things for other people who might not know, things like want versus need kind of a thing? Is there other pet peeve language to look out for?
For me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, like the things like check the box, take a risk, diversity hire. You said it like straight up, the diversity hire, there's, what does diversity means, it's difference, it's other, it's not the same. There's every single person on this panel is diverse, but you could be sitting in a room with 10 people, there's diversity in that room, right? Different stories. And I think it's kind of a change of mindset, and that's not easy to do. That is not easy to do, and especially in a production world where we are tied to schedules and we are tied to budgets. I think somebody brought that up. It narrows the focus, and maybe it's not so much the pet peeves, but it's like opening up the mindset to allow for change in the process sometimes, and change in the bring the folks on the bench in. You got a whole team of people, and I just think, yeah, it's really kind of starting from the top, not just working through entry level, but starting at the top.
Christine, like you mentioned something to me when we had our one-on-one of like within diversity, there is diversity. So
Mhm.
how do we like, I mean, what does the perfect room look like at the end of the day? I know we're on a good track, but it's just like, how do we keep this momentum going? How do we like encourage that the same story can be told from different perspectives of the same community? So I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that came about from talking about how it's like, I had there's this Asian project that we're pitching around. And then, you'd hear from one place like, oh, but we have this other Asian project. And I'm like, but this is a very different Asian project. Because this turned into me ranting about how many vampire stories there have been and how come there can be so many vampire stories, but you can only have one Asian project at the studio. So that was where that came out. Because my story, like as someone whose like parents came here from the Philippines, like is an immigrant parent story. And while that is kind of fresh off the boat, it's not the same. There's like so many differences between my upbringing, that kind of a thing. And yeah, I just think that the more, I also feel like sometimes there is this, and other people have talked about this, where there's like a pressure to tell a certain kind of story because of the landscape. And but what it should boil down to is like, again, like what your experiences are and what's important to you. And if you're doing something, because I think we were also talking about stereotypes and, how come sometimes it seems like the projects are, leaning into stereotypes. And while some people can say like, oh, immigrant, like the way that you wrote your immigrant parents is the way that it is typically written, I'm like, but that is what it is. But the key is to also have the other characters that fill all the, different kinds of the diversity within the diversity. If you're going to have like less pressure on the one, Asian character to be all of the things, but when you have like, the Asian parent, but also the hippie Asian parent, because that also exists, and that kind of thing, the more we can populate, our stories with things that feel real, then better it'll be.
I'll go back and I'll take back the pet peeve, because yes, it's like one color does not fit all and one shade does not fit all. It's like there's so many different shades within every, and even how you orient, right? Like whatever your orientation is, it's like one orientation does not fit all. So I'll add that one to the list. That was a good one.
Paul, did you want to add something?
Yeah, and spot on, Christine and Camille. And that also, speaks to the idea of being tokenized. Like if you have more than one, Asian, say, in the room, like you are adding richness to that perspective. You're adding, different points of view, and all the more universal, because it's not just hinging on this one experience. And you're again, it's like, you don't want to eat a salad just made out of lettuce, right? You want all the other goods. So I had a salad for lunch, so it's all on my mind. But anyway, the point is, yeah, like you want to include as many perspectives rather than just having that one. And Christine, your Filipino American experience is different from my Filipino American experience. So as an example. So. Yeah.
This is awesome because it segues perfectly into my next question. So I'm going to bring in Paul and Yori. Both of you have experienced the immigrant story of coming to America from abroad and how that changes your perspective and how that is reflected in your art and in whether it's the writing, whether it's the drawing, whether it's the people you have on your team. How would you say that reflecting yourself in your work, or how do you maintain that authenticity to yourself while keeping your history behind you? Yuri, let's start with you because I know you have like a really rich story that you shared with me previous when we were talking with our one-on-one.
Oh, whoa, really? I
Yeah,
don't remember.
the how September 11th changed how
Oh,
your visual storytelling.
oh man, that's a long story. I don't know if I can really tell this
But I mean,
here.
like the point is, like there are things that have changed our perspective in what we experience in life. So I just want to
Ab-
know more about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think well, I think kind of also just following up on the previous question, what I wanted to also really emphasize is the beauty of the media that we are playing with, you know, the storytelling and films, visual art, that's universal. And the feeling that that we can share through visual storytelling is universal. And you know, I was born and raised in Japan, and you know, I watch all these Hollywood movies, and one of my favorite films, Witness, is a story about Amish woman in Pennsylvania, and I totally felt like Amish woman in Pennsylvania. And so it's really all about kind of like building empathy. You know, if the story is good, and if the filmmakers behind it is right, then that message transcends the language and the cultural barrier. And now I'm here in the US and making movies, and you know, I don't have the same background as my fellow American filmmakers. You know, I didn't grow up watching you know, the same TV, or I still don't get American football, you know, so there's a lot of things that I can't really bring to the table, but I think the perspective that you bring with your unique background is always valuable. And the things that you take for granted, you look at it from a different angle, and then all of a sudden that becomes something unique and something special. And so for me, that diversity is always helpful for the story, because once you think that things are the way they are, just look at it from different angle, and then all of a sudden, like, you just make a new discovery, and just enriches the story, you know, and hopefully that will enrich the audience's experience. And that's what I believe, and hopefully that's what I can bring to the table. As far as what you mentioned about the 9/11, and that was I started my career as a production assistant, and so just like Camille was saying earlier, you know, I spent so many years, you know, bringing coffee to directors and producers, and that experience is really helpful, because now I know that I'm super lucky here. And so everything that I do is really valuable, and in my background. And I think what happened was, when 9/11 happened, I sort of, you know, thought about like what I was doing with my career, and then I had a second thought, and then I quit. I just said, done with the entertainment, and then I became a social worker for 3.5 years. And so I had a whole different career for about 3.5 years, and then at the end of that time, actually, what brought me back to this career is my passion for storytelling. And I made this short documentary for the organization, and somehow that really moved people who watched it. And you know, so the passion that we have as a writer or artist or director, that's not a coincidence. That's a gift, you know. And I really want to cherish that and honor that and treasure that, and hopefully, you know, I can share that with people out there through films or TV, and that's sorry, I'm so not answering your question, but
No, it's fine. I think basically it's how your life experiences affect your visual art. Like you and Paul both have the experience, whether it was Soul or whether it was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You both introduced New York to the world in a very new way. And I feel like you brought yourselves into it. You brought it in such a way that like New York is a character that's been done time and time again. So I think that's what I would love to hear. We can throw it over to Paul for just a sec. But how did you bring yourself into something, your life experiences into your work?
Totally. And you already very well said. And as an immigrant to myself, I was born in Manila. I moved here when I was 7, here in the States when I was 7. And a lot of growing up meant, more or less assimilating to this new culture, to this American culture. And the way I found my way was through all the hobbies. I have countless of hobbies. One of them, I'm really, I discovered hip hop, and my love for art led to graffiti art. And with that, I had no idea that years later that I'd be working on a project where, oh yeah, New York needs to be designed, and lo and behold, like you can't have New York without the layer of graffiti on walls. So and as someone who has firsthand experience of what that means and has insight on the unwritten rules of that art form, I was able to bring in that specificity of why things are done the way they are in street art culture, and to fold that into the film for Soul, it just made the setting that much more richer and more importantly believable. And just another layer too, like we're for the example of Soul, we're experiencing that film through Joe, the main character's eyes, and his experience as a musician. And so, for me, I've been collecting records since I barely started, high school. And you can see some of them here, but like I know the pain of maintaining furniture and how records can weigh down on your shelf. So like when I was in there designing or helping design Joe's apartment, like we needed that specific bend on the bookshelf to suggest weight and the wear and tear of life that he's going through. So it's those little things that you're not supposed to look at and pay attention to, but it's something that you feel. And as a designer, that's really, it's my duty to present that and to offer that that solution to our filmmaking. And Yori, you had mentioned earlier about being a director, being a storyteller, a storyboard artist. Throughout your career, it's like the important thing is to really tease out the truth in those life experiences and bringing that to your work. And I love that. I love that you said that, and I can't emphasize that enough. And if whether you're a writer or a designer, a director, a lighting artist, a modeler, it's like you really need to allow yourself to tap into those life experiences, because ultimately these films is again a reflection of the creators that create it, and that's I think I really believe that's what makes films from DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, TV shows from your guys' studios, our films at Pixar, make it so appealing and relatable to audiences worldwide.
Joy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think I've had this sort of similar conversation with a artist who was from Northern California, and she was saying that her background, she felt like her background was not special enough, because I have the rather unique background of being born and raised in Japan and everything, but I told her I don't know what it's like to live in Sacramento and what it's like to be a high school girl in Northern California, and so that just like Paul was saying, I think that specificity specificity is the key to create the bond between seemingly completely different worlds. Because when we talk about something, we can find something in common in that detail, and so all of a sudden I can actually relate to someone who grew up in Northern California and went to went to prom and broke her heart, and like I know what it's like, and so I think that's that, like Paul was saying, and I think the specificity and it's everybody's got it. That's, I think, what I'm trying to point. Every one of us has that special voice and vision, and it's our job, if you have a passion, to share that with the world. It's our job to really, focus on it and to work hard for it and to share it. And it's worth sharing. It's worth hearing. It's worth fighting for.
I love that. I want to ask one last question for Paul and Yori. Even though this might not be your specific region of how you work in animation, but how would you say that the features of people of color characters have changed over the time span in like the last decade or so, or ever since you've come into the field? Like, how do you view them now versus how they were kind of drawn, like, in a way that someone who could see it would just instantly guess versus now the care that's taken of like whether it's hair texture or skin color or features. Paul, or yeah, Yori, let's start with you.
Oh, no, I mean, I think the story-wise, it's super encouraging to see movie like Soul and Spider-Verse. And I remember being in a movie theater and, sitting in behind the audience and who was the African-American family, and they were cheering for the Miles. And that experience is, I think, is so precious. And then again, sort of going into that specificity of the Black Puerto Rican family, and or you watch all these Japanese anime or animation films, and you can still relate to what it's like to be a Japanese girl and then encounter monster like Totoro. And so in that sort of cultural specificity, you find the common ground. And I think I'm so happy that in the animation industry in general, we are honoring that difference, and really respecting that. And so I love to see more of that for sure. And just like, Christine was saying, I think diversity is not simple. And so you really have to care that specificity within diversity. And so you don't just say Asian, there's so many different, diversity and nationalities and cultural nuances in that. And so I would love to see our industry really honoring and respecting that differences in our diversity and finding the common ground.
Paul, do you have any closing thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So the question is about, even though this might not be the exact area of animation that you focus upon, but how we're seeing like kind of care and affection given to the features of people of color as like characters, whether it's their hair texture, the shape of their lips, their skin tone, which is like a huge one. So yes, that is what the question was. How do you feel like that care has been given? And yeah, go for it.
Awesome, thank you. That I specifically from Seoul, the way I've just observed the filmmaking process, like a design of a character isn't just on the shoulders of one person. It's a collaborative medium, animation, and so we are working with with musicians, with cultural leaders, with the people of color here in the studio to really come together and share their experiences so that we can extract those specific observations and their own unique perspectives into the characters. How say one person might share something about how they remember their aunt and their little mannerisms, and those traits can then filter through the way a character in our film can maneuver or reflect that, just to again humanize and give that specific nuance to that character. And so the care is I think it's just improving film after film, project after project, and again that makes our characters and our films that much more richer and relatable. And one of the things about Spider-Verse that I really love is how the Black Puerto Rican family, which is so specific to also New York, like that is it's like a regional, like local thing, and to take us through that story of Miles, and it's just it was such a delightful thing to see. And again, he was like, slapping stickers. I was like, oh yeah, I know about that life. So again, it's a way to engage, the audience, and keep them connected, throughout the storytelling. So yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've wrapped it up for my questions for you guys. I want to open up the floor by calling on you guys individually to see if you have any closing thoughts or questions for one another. So Camille, I'd love to start with you. Is there any question that you want to ask any of the panelists or any closing thoughts?
It's more of just amazed at all the work that everybody has done. I just have to, I actually, the funny thing is I'm a first generation. My mother comes from Honduras and my dad is Creole, but I kind of, I have two sides to my culture. And for me, watching a movie like Spider-Verse was everything, because I never had a film like that growing up with representation. When my daughter watched it, it was just, for me, it being a parent and having a movie like that for my, first, she was like, I don't want to see Spider-Man. And she's seen it probably 50 times now, knows the soundtrack back and forth, and Christine, you worked on Kipo, blew her mind. We watched it all together. I mean, these shows have an impact. We just got a puppy, and guess what the puppy's name is? It's Kipo. So it's like, you make an impact, it really does resonate. And watching the next generation come up, representation is everything. So I just have to say thank you.
Amazing. Christine, I'd love to ask you, do you have any questions for anybody, or do you have any closing thoughts or endearing stories about pets? We're open to all.
I love that there's a pet named Kipo. And that's so cool to hear. And I'm so glad to be here. This was so amazing. And I loved hearing all of these stories. And I don't know, on the Kipo front, because that was so nice to hear. And I know that Kipo holds a special place in my heart. And it also came out during quarantine. So we did not get to do things like the rounds, the Comic-Con rounds, or the interaction with anyone. I don't know, I guess kind of wanted to see how everyone's feeling with this quarantine life. I think that animation can at least keep going, and I know that on our side, we've adjusted, and but yeah, it's a different landscape now. How are you guys all feeling?
Yeah, it's definitely changed, but it's also making stuff like this possible, where I know Paula's in the Bay Area, I'm in LA, we're all in different places, but we can all come together like this and have these amazing conversations, or collaborate with all these different organizations without having to be stuck in LA traffic. That's nice. But Yori, do you have any questions for anybody, or some closing thoughts that we would love to hear from you?
I think one of the things that I really appreciate about animation, and all the panelists here, is I think animation really helps people, definitely me, relate to the characters maybe better than maybe live action films. You watch a movie and you feel like you are that hero, and then you walk out and you look at the mirror and you know that you're not Chris Pratt, or what I mean? It's like, but an animation character, you can kind of, I don't know, I feel like I can be that character maybe better than a detailed live action face. And as I grew up watching animation in Japan, I never really thought that they're not Japanese, or they're whatever, because they got all purple hairs, pink hairs, all kinds of hairs. And so and I have no hair, so I'm I can relate to basically anyone. So I think animation is a great media to really bridge the gap and common, and to find the empathy with the characters, and I love it. I just have to love because I actually came from live action background, and I just really fell in love with the media and the creative people like you all here, and the creative community. And I hope we can all keep making these stories. That's it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Paul, let's hear from you, man.
Yeah, totally. And to just echo what you all said, Camila, you and your family being able to see yourself in films like Spider-Verse, I think just that in itself, just visibility, right? Whether you identify with a prop that's, or an Easter egg tucked away in the corner. I know for me, when I was a student, when I was watching Finding Nemo, there was a hut in the aquarium. And I think only Filipinos knew what that was. And for me as a young student, I was like, hey, that means somebody at Pixar is Filipino. So for me, I connected the dots. Like if they can make it, that means I can make it there somewhere someday too. So all to say, what we do is super important. And I think just you being here, giving visibility to folks that look like us, the younger generation that will see us in this panel. Hopefully they'll be inspired to continue on the path and what to do whatever they choose to do. Follow a career in animation and so forth. So I'm just glad to be with in your company right now here, and I'm just so excited to share this space with you and have such a really meaningful conversation. I think it's super important, and my job description, right, is as a designer, as a set designer, but also I really take this part of the job where I'm able to have conversations like this really seriously, because I know there's people out there that are just like really hungry and just really wanting the information, just that insight of like how can I make it through that door and someday have a career in animation. So again, with gratitude, thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, this is awesome. Honestly, I think I really did set out to achieve an objective, which is that we are all a part of the same ecosystem. And it's great to see everybody connect in this way of like agreeing that, like, yes, the recruiter does kind of like correlate with who staffs the show, and who writes the show is also going to be impacted by who draws the show. So this is amazing. Okay, cool. I would like to open it up to Q&As. Let's see. Do, do, do. What is something that you wish you know now that you wish you knew when entering the industry? Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so who wants to take that one? Or do you guys all want to answer that? I know what I wish. I wish for myself, even though this question wasn't for me, that it's okay. It's like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you'll figure it out, you'll get there. But yeah, Camille, let's start with you.
I don't know if it's the mama in me, but I think it's have faith and trust that everything's going to work out and be okay. I think there were not a lot of opportunities and doors open to me in the beginning, but I never let that stop me, and I just kept moving forward and pushing ahead. So I think it's like, trust what you want to do, believe in what you want to do, keep pursuing what you want to do with all your passion, and you'll make it. And I think, again, I'll just reiterate, there's so many more resources now, so many more organizations to reach out to, so many different pathways in, and the information's all there. So just keep going.
Awesome. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
This might be, I guess, more for if there are new writers out there, because this is just something that took me a while to realize. And I know that in the beginning, it's very nerve-wracking to be in a room or to pitch and all that stuff. But no one thinks about you as much as you do.
Yeah, I hear that. I
just know that in the beginning of my career, like I was just always thinking like, oh, everyone's going to remember that I messed up or that this or that happens. Like they do not. No one's like, and if I just realized that a little bit earlier, I think I would have just had some some nerves go away.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like we all take a lot of pressure on ourselves that we don't need to. But okay, next question. Camille mentioned that there's a lot of organizations that help amplify and advocate for diverse voices in the industry, like WIA. Where can folks find a list of these, or would you be open to mentioning a few more? In Paul, Yori, Christine, if you guys know of any other organizations and you want to give them a shout out, would love to hear. Camille, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Women in Animation. It's womeninanimation.org, and there is Rise Up Animation. These are all nonprofits. Latinx in Animation. I know I'm probably forgetting Black and Animated, Black Women Animate. There's quite a few out there, but those are some really good ones to start with, and all have varying programs and pathways in and access points. So yes, you should definitely look at some of those.
Awesome. Paul, Yori, Christine, do you guys know of any other organizations you want to give a shout out to?
Those are the same organizations I would have said, but I would also mention that there are like a lot of spreadsheets floating around. I know that I've been contacted from like there's a Filipino writer spreadsheet that people would find me through or something. I think that we're just, a little bit more organized now, and there's just, if, I'm sure there are a bunch that are up on Twitter, or a way to find them. But yeah, if you can add yourself to those, it also helps when people are looking.
Yeah. And we always have Google. So we can get as specific as we want on the Google, and hopefully we'll find that little corner of the world, which is interesting because I have personally found this corner of the world that I didn't know existed, of connecting MPAC with WIA. So even opportunities like that where you create for yourself, that's always a winner too. Well, not always, but like it was a good one for me. Okay, so somebody has a practical follow-up question. I was recently asked to pitch an animation one-pager for a show that could include narrative and illustrations. But what exactly goes into that as a pitch format? I think Yori, can you take this one?
I've actually never really followed the specific pitch format, but I guess one general rule is that I try to keep it short, probably anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes at most. And if, somebody's asking specifically for that format, of course, I'll try to do it. But as far as the pitch, the format, like I was saying it earlier, I think it really kind of depend also, who you are pitching to, and what studios and everything. But I think instead of trying to convey the whole story with all these details and story beats and whatnot, I try to really just introduce the character and the relationship. Because when you watch a movie or TV shows, the plots and everything is great, but really the character is what you're coming back for. And so I really try to kind of focus on it. And again, to show how excited you are about your story, and to communicate that sort of let's make this. And I think that's what I go for. But that's sort of in person. In writing, I think Christine can answer much better than I can. But yeah, format is, I think if a studio asks for it, then of course. But if not, it's like however you want to do it.
Awesome. Christine, do you have anything you want to add?
I have mixed feelings about those asks, because I feel like they're asking you to come up with a pitch without asking you to come up with a pitch, by saying like, oh, you only need to do like one page, but like truly a pitch, like to really get the scope of the show, is more than that. What I've had to do those in the past, it was like focusing on like characters and like making it clear enough to where it feels like in your head you should have all the answers to the more questions that they will have, but putting enough detail on there to where you get the idea of it. But I have to say, and this is just my experience, that I haven't gotten a job from doing the one-pagers, but I have gotten a job from doing more than that. But that was like on my own time and because I really, really felt like this was free work that I wanted to.
Awesome. Okay, Paul, I'm going to shoot. Oh, does anybody else want to add?
Oh, the other thing I was going to just add for the pitch is that you're also pitching yourself as a filmmaker too. So, you know, especially like me, I'm nobody compared to other more established filmmakers. So I still got to sell myself. And also, again, we're getting, the pitch is just only the first date, right? And you get into long distance, I mean, not long distance, long-term relationship.
You made the relationship harder, you already know.
No, the things get complicated, I'm sure. But so again, the people sitting across the table are also looking at you and go, do I want to work with this guy? And I'm doing the same thing. You know, I want to make sure that I want to work with these guys too, and then hopefully we can all meet in the middle through the story. And you know, are you really excited about this project? And yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, let's do it. And so we high five in the middle. So that's the, I think, to me, the pitch. So I think it is important that, you know, you're not just selling the story, but you also representing who you are, you know, so you got to be true to yourself. That's what I was going to add. Yeah.
Yes, that is awesome. Paul, I'm going to shoot this question to you. How can producers or directors or any of the more higher up people be more supportive? What are some examples of how people have lifted you up?
Great question. I think in a very general sense, like just inviting you in the room to be part of those conversations of like, how do we approach, say, you know, designing, you know, this character's living room? What are the specific things that we can, you know, imbue in there to support the storytelling, you know, and convey this character even more to the audience? And one example that I can think of is, I know my experience on Soul, Pete, Dr. Kemp, Powers, and Dana Murray really set a healthy tone to the rest of the crew. Like, hey, like this is a story of a man who is really finding like his purpose in life, and so like when we only have X amount of time on this earth, like, and so we're following him through this journey, and so we were asked to really, you know, contribute to the film in ways that like, what can we draw from our own life experiences and how can we put that into the film? And you know, I've given examples earlier of some ways that I've been able to contribute in that way. And just by them verbalizing that and articulating that to the team, everybody was on board because there was this open invitation for everybody to collaborate and take ownership of the work that they're doing. And as a result, more collaboration, you know, happened. But you know, if they hadn't said anything or set that tone that way, I think people would just probably be hiding, you know, behind their desk and just not speaking up. And you know, it really does help when it comes from the top to really set that tone for the rest of the crew. And that's something I really appreciate. And I felt like that helped, you know, made my job that much more enjoyable as a result, and made my experience working with the teams that I worked with that much more enjoyable as well, because they were able to do the same thing that I was doing, you know, in my side of the pipeline. So, yeah.
Camille, is there anything you wanted to add to that of like what you've seen, like with the people that you work with, how are they able to enrich those that are kind of coming up in their career?
Yeah, I think the folks that I've seen, you know, I guess, again, the decision makers, when they have an open mind, you know, when they're willing to bring in new voices, when they're willing to, you know, not, I guess it's like thinking outside the box and try new ways of doing things, you know, that's where you really see, you can almost feel it and see it from the beginning. And it's like what Yori was saying about the dating. It is a relationship, you know, and when you put together, like you, again, from all these projects that everybody on this panel has worked on, you see that magic and that happen, right? And that's because somebody was like, okay, well, we're going to do this a little bit differently, and we're going to put more detail in here, and we're going to bring in the right people. and it comes out in the storytelling at the end of the day, right? It's like, you know, you had this beautiful romance.
So funny. You guys talk about the dating aspect. I always just like think of like swipe culture and just like the rejection. And I'm like, oh no, this is what this description is painful. But no, I understand. It is like building a relationship, that one-on-one of like, what's the point of being accepted by a studio that's not going to help enrich your vision, which is like going on a bad date and being stuck with them for many, many years. So yeah, there's some benefits to getting rejected. But yeah, that being said, I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I want to thank you guys so, so much once again. This has been such a cool experience. And to be able to, again, just visit different parts of the same ecosystem. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all the people that listened in, watched, asked questions. Yeah, if you want to know any more information about any of these or eh, any information about any of these organizations, please feel free to email WIA, MPAC, or the Writers Guild Foundation. We all have our handles on the interwebs, so feel free to reach out. And thank you so much. Hi,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.